We are on scene tonight with striking body cam and surveillance video from Metro Las Vegas Police Department, showing the dangers that officers face every day. Two officers were getting gas at the end of their shift when an SUV pulled up and the woman behind the wheel said to them in a low voice, "Help me." She said the man in the passenger seat was her ex-boyfriend who asked her for a ride to the hospital. But then he started saying things that made her feel threatened. As police were talking to her, 34-year-old Manuel Martinez got out of the vehicle, pointed a gun at officers. They took cover and fired at the suspect just as their cameras began recording audio.
Just be advised, he's in the patrol vehicle. Get back, get back! That's safe, You see him? Yeah. He's down? We got one down.
Martinez was hit and started crawling into the police vehicle. That's where it turns out he hid his gun, a 9mm Beretta, between the seats. Martinez crawled out of the police SUV and stood on the bumper to see the officers' positions. Then he ran away behind the gas station.
6 North 10. I have one HMA, black sweater. He's running southbound. He's behind the gas station now. He's running westbound. Put your hands up! Put your hands up! Shut up!
Got canine here.
Put your hands up! He got a phone! Phone!
Police chased Martinez and saw he was carrying a phone in his hand. You hear him yelling there? Phone, phone, phone. Assistant Sheriff later said that communication between the officers was critical in not escalating the situation when they realized Martinez no longer had a gun. Police found the suspect on the ground near railroad tracks. He was taken to the hospital in stable condition. The woman driving the SUV was not hurt. Martinez is charged with 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon and possession of a gun by a prohibited person. His trial is set to begin on May 16th, and the incident remains under internal review. Joining me, as always, is Sean Sticks Larkin, former Tulsa police lieutenant. All right, Sticks, let's start from the moment the woman asks for help, right? That right there, that's when the incident begins.
Yeah, Dan, talk about, what other profession do you pull up to a gas pump, with your buddy to fill up? Somebody comes to you for help, and then you're involved in a deadly force encounter, a shooting, literally within about 10 or 15 seconds. But obviously, this woman, she knows the guy. She knows his behavior. She picks him up to try to do what she thinks is a favor for her ex-boyfriend. As you mentioned, the statements he gave to her in the car, they haven't been publicly released. Obviously, she was in fear of her life to the point that she sees a police vehicle and goes to them for help.
So the suspect actually ends up hiding his gun in the police vehicle. That doesn't seem like the smartest move, but I guess the point is he wanted to get rid of the gun.
Here's what I think happened. When he gets out of the suspect side of, the passenger side of his car, immediately the officer is obviously well-trained. He's prepared. He engages in, the gunfire with the suspect. I think the suspect was actually trying to jump into the police vehicle and take off. Being that they were pulled over, parked for gas, I'm assuming that they had the keys out of the ignition. So I bet that was his intent there. Set the gun inside, realize, hey, I can't take off on this car, and just happened to leave the gun in there before he fled on foot.
Now, let's talk about that moment that we heard on the audio where you hear the officer yell numerous times, phone, phone, phone. Such an important moment in the context of what we just saw.
Yeah, there's been well-documented cases, that have happened across the country where somebody has displayed a phone, towards a law enforcement officer, particularly at night, insinuating it was a gun, and the officer feared that it was, in fact, a gun and fired. It shows, again, the importance of having a good tactical light on your pistol that these officers did out there that night. And they had distance from the suspect, so they were able to illuminate him while he was down on the ground. And just as you mentioned, kudos to whatever first officer spotted, hey, that's a phone, that's not a gun, which helps slow things down.
But it's even more important than that, meaning because he did have a gun, right? They knew he had a gun, so it wasn't just a situation where they're saying, hey, he's got a phone, don't worry. It's literally saying, hey, he had a gun before, but what I'm seeing right now is a phone.
Absolutely. And listen, again, I wasn't obviously out there at the scene, but I'm guessing that they probably hadn't found the gun that was inside of the police cruiser at this point. They had every reason to believe that he was still armed. And again, very, very good job by the officers out there. However, listen, it very well would have been probably justified legally, had they engaged in a second, shootout with him, fearing that he had a gun based on what had previously happened, a minute before.
Good. No, I just really like to see that kind of communication amongst the officers there. I think it was really important. I think the assistant sheriff was right. Sean Larkin, as always, thank you. Have a great weekend. That does it for us tonight. Banfield starts right now. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.